In the autumn of 1888, a shadow fell over the gaslit streets of London's East End. A killer, whose name would echo through history, began a reign of terror that has fascinated and horrified people for over a century. This is the story of Jack the Ripper, the unidentified murderer who haunted the impoverished district of Whitechapel. Whitechapel in the late 19th century was a place of extreme poverty, overcrowding, and desperation. Its dimly lit alleyways and grimy lodging houses were the perfect hunting ground for a predator. This was a world of fog, horse-drawn carriages, and stark social divides where life was cheap, especially for the vulnerable women who walked the streets at night. It was against this bleak backdrop that the first murder occurred. On August 31st, 1888, the body of Mary Ann Nichols was discovered. She was the first of what would become known as the Canonical Five, the 5 victims most widely believed to have been killed by the same hand. The brutality of the crime sent a shockwave through the community, but it was only the beginning. Just over a week later, on September 8th, another victim, Annie Chapman, was found. The pattern was becoming terrifyingly clear. The killer targeted impoverished women, and his attacks were escalating in their savagery. Panic began to grip London. The newspapers, with their sensational headlines, fanned the flames of fear, giving the mysterious killer a name that would become legendary: Jack the Ripper. The name itself came from a letter purportedly sent by the killer to the Central News Agency. It was signed Jack the Ripper. This letter, along with another known as the Saucy Jackie postcard, taunted the police and promised more to come. Whether these letters were genuine or a cruel hoax remains a subject of debate. But they cemented the killer's macabre identity in the public imagination. The terror reached its peak on the night of September 30th, a date that would go down in infamy as the double event. In the early hours of the morning, the bodies of 2 women, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, were discovered within an hour of each other. The killer was becoming bolder, more brazen, striking twice in a single night. Catherine Eddowes' murder was particularly gruesome, and a piece of her apron was later found in a nearby doorway, below a cryptic message scrawled on the wall. The police, fearing it would incite anti-Semitic riots, washed it away before it could be properly photographed, a decision that has been scrutinized by historians ever since. The police were in a frenzy. Scotland Yard, led by men like Inspector Frederick Aberline, was under immense pressure. They conducted house-to-house inquiries, interviewed thousands of people, and followed up on countless leads. Vigilante groups like the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee patrolled the streets, desperate to protect their community and catch the fiend. But the killer was like a ghost. He slipped through the shadows, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror, but never a solid clue. No. The final and most horrific murder occurred on November 9th, 1888. The victim was Mary Jane Kelly. Unlike the others, she was killed indoors. In her small room on Miller's Court, the scene that greeted the police was one of unimaginable horror. The sheer brutality of this final act suggested a killer consumed by a terrifying rage. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. After Mary Jane Kelly's murder, the killings ceased. Jack the Ripper vanished into the London fog, never to be heard from again. So who was he? This is the question that has fueled over a century of speculation and investigation. The list of suspects is long and varied, ranging from the plausible to the utterly bizarre. One of the most prominent suspects at the time was Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher who was found drowned in the River Thames shortly after the last murder. His own family suspected him, and his death coincided with the end of the killing spree, making him a compelling candidate. Then there's Cyril Kolosowski, also known as George Chapman, a Polish immigrant who worked as a barber. He was later convicted and executed for poisoning 3 of his wives. Inspector Aberline himself, one of the lead investigators on the Ripper case, was convinced that Chapman was the man they had been hunting. Another popular suspect is Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jewish immigrant who worked as a hairdresser in Whitechapel. He suffered from severe mental illness and was known to have a hatred of women. He was eventually institutionalized. In recent years, a shawl said to have been found near Catherine Eddowes' body was subjected to DNA analysis, with some researchers claiming it linked Kosminski to the crime scene. However, these findings are highly controversial and have been widely disputed by other experts. The list goes on and on. There was Michael Ostrog, a Russian con man and thief with a history of being institutionalized. There was Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American quack doctor who was arrested in London at the time for unrelated offenses and was known to despise women. Some theories have even pointed to figures as unlikely as the artist Walter Sickert or even a member of the royal family, Prince Albert Victor. Each suspect has a book, a theory, a set of circumstantial evidence pointing in their direction. But that's all it is, circumstantial. There's never been a single piece of definitive proof to unmask Jack the Ripper. The lack of forensic science at the time was a major handicap. Investigators had no concept of fingerprinting, DNA analysis, or modern profiling techniques. They were fighting a new kind of monster with old, inadequate tools. The mystery is not just about the killer's identity, but also about his motives. Why did he do it? Was it a twisted hatred of women? A desire for notoriety? Was he a madman? Or a chillingly sane individual who simply enjoyed the act of killing? His surgical precision in some of the mutilations led to the theory that he might have had medical knowledge, perhaps a doctor or a butcher. The legacy of Jack the Ripper extends far beyond the 5 women he murdered. The case had a profound impact on society, shone a harsh light on the squalid living conditions in London's East End, leading to social reforms. It also changed policing and newspaper reporting forever. The term serial killer didn't exist yet, but Jack the Ripper became the archetype. Today, the story continues to captivate us. It has spawned countless books, movies, and documentaries. Entire industry known as Ripperology is dedicated to studying the case. Amateur and professional sleuths continue to pore over the old files, hoping to be the one to finally solve the world's most famous cold case. But in our fascination, it's crucial to remember the real victims. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. They were not just names in a grim tale. They were daughters, wives, and mothers whose lives were cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. They were victims of poverty and circumstance long before they became victims of a killer. The identity of Jack the Ripper may forever remain a mystery, lost to the mists of time. He is a phantom of history, a faceless embodiment of evil. Perhaps that is the most terrifying part of the story. The killer who came from the shadows committed unspeakable acts and then disappeared back into them, never to be caught, leaving only a blood-stained name and a question that will likely never be answered. Let us know in the comments which Jack the Ripper theory you find most convincing. See you next time.